Uh, yeah, we can have any amount of ideas or even single idea, and the best thing to do is to convert your passion into action straight away and experiment for its initial viability. And the process to do that is the customer discovery or customer development process. Dr. Valliere is going to speak on this. He's the Director of Entrepreneurship Research Institute, Ted Rogers School of Management, Ryerson University. He teaches and conducts research in entrepreneurship, private equity, finance, economics, and sociology. He's also had a long and varied career in industry, working as a professional engineer and in IT management for a range of large and small companies. He's also worked in commercial banking for several high-tech sectors and as a venture capitalist in the software industry. Dr. Valliere has taught at School of Business, where he has developed and delivered graduate level entrepreneurial courses in new venture formation and managing high growth firms. And he's won awards for his excellence in teaching. He has a PhD and MBA. He's master's in engineering and a bachelor's in engineering. Please help me welcome Dr. Valliere.
So, good evening, welcome. I've been asked to talk a little bit about business model development, search for customers and development of customers and working out the business model. And I get a sense from overhearing some of the conversations here that some of these ideas are things that you're already familiar with. And I can see you were getting antsy as people were giving their little talks about what they're up to. That we perhaps we're starting late and running a little slowly. So I'm going to make up for that because I talk very quickly. And you probably noticed already, but I'm just warming up now. I've got a lot of material I want to share with you. I'm just going to throw things up on the screen and talk about stuff. If it's interesting to you, make a note and we can talk later on during the break or something like that. I'm just going to throw a few things out there that I hope some of it may be new. A lot of it is going to be old stuff, but maybe just throwing a slightly different perspective on it might be valuable. Okay, which one? Scroll. Scroll. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so talking about business models, and that's one of the fashionable buzzwords these days that we like to toss around. And I come from a school of management at the university, and we're very good at tossing around all these buzzwords, most of which nobody quite knows what they mean. Nobody will admit that, but nobody really knows. So I'm going to talk specifically what we mean by business model here. And the challenge of finding a viable business model. Finding a viable and scalable business model is the most important thing to do during a startup, because running life in a startup is not just like running a small company. It's not the same as running a small version of a big company. The challenges are qualitatively different. So we're not interested at this stage of how to run the firm effectively. It's not about efficiency. We're not trying to run it the best possible way. We haven't yet figured out what it is. So we're trying to find out, what is this model to operate? There's all sorts of things that we might do, and if you choose incorrectly, that'll kill the company. 80% of new ventures die within 4 years. The infant mortality rate of new ventures remains distressingly high because people skip this step. They go immediately into, I've got this bright idea, I'm going to serve these people by producing widgets for them or doing some service for them, and then I'll get paid and that's it. And we assume that that is all fine and jump into, I want to build it and I want to operate it, and I want to operate it efficiently. I can't wait to grow it and do all these wonderful things. Skipping the step of, have I chosen the right business model in the first place? And because many people skip that step, within 4 years, the venture is dead. You've lost all the money. More importantly, you've lost all your time, the opportunity cost. You can never get that back. And you burn your reputation. You burn your social capital trying to do something that was a bad idea from the beginning because we skipped the step of figuring out whether it was the right thing to pursue in the first place. So what we're talking about here is, how do we find that? How do we stay in that mode, that search mode? It's not about execution. At this stage, we are not concerned about questions of execution. All the standard things that you'll learn in a business school, come do an MBA with us, and we'll teach you all about how to execute well, how to execute efficiently. It's got nothing to do with that at this stage. We haven't yet decided, are we executing the right thing? There's a difference between doing the right thing and doing the thing right. Here we're trying to figure out what's the right thing to be doing. So we're more concerned with identifying the correct customers and the correct value to provide to them and the correct way to earn sufficient revenues to pay our costs, all of those things before we get interested in operating it. So it's about the search. We don't yet know what the appropriate business model is. We have an idea, we have an initial hypothesis, something that we think will work, but we haven't yet proven it. So that's what this part of the process is about. How do we go through that? And the main vehicle that we use is this business model canvas, which has already been referred to. And I'm going to spend some time in the talk walking through the different pieces here. It's just a tool for us to keep track of what we think the business model is going to be. And as we learn things and change things, we'll update it, and eventually we will, at the end of this process, have found a business model that we have great confidence in. And then we will switch into operation mode, into execution mode. How do I build this? How do I get the resources? How do I put the processes in place? How do I get the right people involved to do this thing that I think now is the correct thing to be doing? So this is about the thought process to fill in this canvas. So I want, oh sure, take questions.
What's static strategy?
Oh, okay, so the history of this business model canvas, this picture here by Osterwalder, it was originally created, had nothing to do with entrepreneurs. It has nothing to do with new ventures. It was a tool, a diagramming tool for any business to describe what their current strategy is. So you could be working for an investment bank or an automaker or something, and you could fill in this and say, that is our strategy. It's a static picture. This is how our firm operates. We sell these things to these people. We make money this way. Boom. But it turned out, this unexpected benefit, ancillary use, it turned out that this is such a good tool for doing dynamically by playing with it, by saying, I think it will be this. Let me go and try something. I'll experiment. I'll change something. And so the dynamic and evolving version has become very useful for entrepreneurs. So that's what I want to walk through. We are taking a tool and applying it for a use for which the author had no idea. This was not what it was created for. The stuff that we're doing with the business model canvas is not what it was created for. It's better. Okay, thank you. All right, so let me walk through these pieces. First up, so we'll start on the right-hand side. The customers. Figuring out who are our customers. We have to figure out who these people are and what we're going to do for them. So we need to have a clear understanding. And we may have an initial idea. I think the people I'm going to be serving are these people. But are they all the same? Maybe there's segments within there. We're going to go and learn about who these people are. For many of the people in the businesses in the room, the social-oriented businesses, you may have more than one group of customers. You may have, you may have the customers and they turn out they have segments with slightly different needs. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about a bigger issue, which is you have customers on both sides of the business. I have the people for whom I provide a service and make their life better. I have the people who pay me and I do something for them. And they're not the same people. I'm not selling widgets to somebody who takes out their money, pays me, and I give them a widget. I have two different groups. Or perhaps I have three different groups. Because I have the funders, but I have the policy people and the people with the need. And you could end up having several of these groups. And you need to know who they are. You need to have, and again, we'll have an initial idea, a hypothesis of who we think our customer segments are that we're going to need to validate. Because if you get that wrong, the company will die. So we're going to look for who these people are. Next up, we think we know who the customers are. What is it that we do for them? What is the value proposition? What do we provide that they consider of value, for which they would pay money? Maybe we charge them, maybe we don't, but they would, because they consider it to be valuable. And every customer group that we identified on the previous box, there has to be a value proposition for them. And those can, again, all be different. So what we do for this group, what value we provide them, will be very different than the value we provide them. And we need to have that very clear, because if we get that wrong, we'll be trying to give people what they don't want. Or we think we'll provide the same service to all of our stakeholders, and it's only pleasing one of them, and everybody else is not happy with what we're doing. So we need to think that through and test it. So what do we provide for each of our customer groups? Okay, so we're through 2 boxes. We've got 9 boxes. We're going fast. Okay? Who are our customers? Who are all of our customers? And what's the value proposition different for each one of them? Next up, how do we get it to them? What are the channels through which that value is received? And again, if we're making widgets and people come and buy them, fine, what do we do? Where do you get this? You go to Office Depot or something, Staples. But for all those other groups, the value that they get, only some people are getting the widget that we make, the little clickers. Other people are getting different sorts of value. Okay, what value? We got that on the previous slide. Now, how do they get it? What is the channel through which we deliver that value? And for all of them, we need to walk through that channel. Even if it's a simple case of, we give you this and you give me money. How does he get it? Walk through the entire channel. Say, goes from me, goes to distributors, goes to retailer. And at each stage there, what value is being added to it, and what does that do for our cost of customer acquisition? Who's doing what? And that's easy for that. The primary channel, the one that we all think about, is who gets the widget and pays me the cash. And even that may have several players in it. But when we get to the other stakeholders in the business, the same issue is there. How do they receive their value? So we're going to go through all of the different value propositions and all of the customers, and for each one, what is the channel by which that value is delivered? So we figure out our best hypothesis for that, our best guess. Next one. What is the nature of our relationship to that particular customer? We're going to, again, do this for each customer segment that we have. So for the people who buy widgets, are we a one-time relationship? It's a transactional business? Or it's an ongoing relationship? If it's a transactional business, is it anonymous? You don't even know who we are. We're selling Coca-Cola, you go up to the machine, you put a loonie in, you get a Coke. Coke has no idea who you are, they don't care. Or is it more important that we have a closer relationship because the value gets to how well we understand your specific needs and that we tailor our offering? And it's the fact that we're able to tailor it, that's the whole point that you do business with us. In which case, we do need to know who you are. And if it's an ongoing relationship, we need to know what your needs are now, but what are they going to be in the future, and what have we done for you in the past? Those things have implications later for how we'll operate the business. How do we get our customers? How do we keep the customers? And how do we grow them? So what are your thoughts for each of your customer groups and the value that you're providing? How will you first get them? How will you acquire customers? What goes on in the head of a customer of that type to make them decide to come to you? Is it just that you have a better offering? You have some competitive advantage? The service that you provide is a little better than the other guys? Or the widget that you have has a laser built into it and theirs doesn't? As if anybody cares? That kind of differentiation is so easy to do. Everybody does it. And if you're only a little bit better, customers won't switch. The rule of thumb, if you're going to do product differentiation as your way of getting customers, is you have to be 10 times better. 10 times more effective, 10 times cheaper, 10 times more functionality, 10 times more reliable, 10 times more something that they care about. How would you know what they care about? It won't be what you think it is. But 10 times better, not twice as good, not 50% better. Customers never switch suppliers for something that's only twice as good. The rule of thumb is 10 times better. It's very hard to get people to switch their patterns of behavior. Much harder than you think. So, how do we get them? And when we get them, how do we keep them? What's our strategy for keeping that relationship and getting more business out of them? And how do we grow them? How do we get them to do more things with us? So you're a customer of ours for buying this or for receiving this service. How do we get more into this relationship and get more business out of you? Okay? Next up. Having thought about those first 4 boxes then, we know who the customers are. We know what value we provide them. We know the channel through which we give them that value. We figured out all the steps of that. And we have figured out what kind of relationship we want from them. Now, and only now, are we in a position to figure out, now what will we actually charge them for? Somebody has to pay us. There has to be revenue somewhere. Not all the customers. Many of the customers will be giving things for. They're clients. We provide a service to them. But somebody has to give us revenue. Otherwise, this won't be sustainable. And we've got to be able to pay our costs somewhere. Who? Which ones of them? And what will be our model? How will we charge them? Which things will we charge them for? Get my papers caught up here. Lots of different ways we might charge people. I mean, that's just the tip of the iceberg, right? We could do a straight transaction. I'll give you the widget, you give me the cash. It could be a subscription service. It could be a freemium model. Hey, you get this part for free, but if you want the upgraded special version with all the bells and whistles, that you pay for. It could be, you don't pay us anything for that, but we take a fee out of the transaction as it goes by, because we're essentially a market. And I think many of the social businesses at the end of the day are marketplaces. We aren't eBay, we aren't taking somebody's junk from their basement and moving it from this person to this person, and they're happy to get rid of it, so they pay us, and they're happy to receive it, so they pay us. We could charge both. We're moving cash from these people who want to get rid of cash in order to achieve some goal to these people who want cash. But we're still a marketplace, which means great lessons to be learned from other market-oriented businesses, market-based businesses, all the marketplace stuff that was done in the early 2000s. There's a lot of examples there to steal ideas from. And we'll come back to stealing ideas from the people who've gone before. So what will we charge for? We know who the customers are, and we know what value. We know how they receive the value. We know whether the relationship is a one-time or a very deep and ongoing relationship, and where we charge, who we charge, and on what basis. So we've got money coming in the door now. Now we can start to look at the other side. How do we do this, and what's it going to cost? So the first one, what resources will it take? If we're going to provide that value, what are we going to need? What kinds of physical resources will we need? What raw materials and what production capability will we need? What kind of intellectual resources? What kinds of talented people? What information will we have to have access to? What kinds of social resources? What connections do we need? What kinds of social capital and credibility do we need? What legitimacy do we need in order to operate in this market? In order to do that, in order to provide that kind of value to those people on that kind of a relationship, what would we need to have? What tangible things, what conceptual things, what social things would we need to have? If you were sitting back and just thinking about this and drawing pictures on a whiteboard or something, which is exactly what we're doing here, what would the ideal company need to have? This is that stage where you say, I'm not going to avoid the error lots of entrepreneurs make, where they say, what have I got? Okay, I've got this much money, and I've got this kind of knowledge, and I know these people, and we got a lot of hard work and passion and goodwill. Okay, good, that's a nice endowment of resources there. What's the best thing I could do with this? That's a recipe for very small success or failure. Instead, what would it take to do it right? If you were really going to be successful in this business, if you were going to dominate it, become the #1 player doing this service, what would you need? And this is the box to put that stuff in. Because our goal is to say, if we've chosen this right, if we've designed the business model well, all those resources that we need, we're going to need this much money, we're going to need these kind of talent, we're going to need people with these kinds of relationships, we'll get it. Somehow we'll get them. And at the end of the day, that's the core definition of being an entrepreneur. And that's Howard Stevenson's definition. He's the entrepreneurship prof at MIT. Entrepreneurship is pursuing opportunities even though you don't have the resources, because you'll get them. If you design the business model well, if you've really figured out the beautiful opportunity, the people with the resources will get on board. The people with money want to give you money. It's doing them no good. They can't make any return on it. VCs don't make any money until they invest. Banks don't make any money unless they loan it out. The people with real talent, they're not going to have fun sitting in some boring job, sitting in a 10-foot square fabric-lined cubicle with their own fluorescent light. They want to go out and do something cool. So if you figured out the right business model, you get the resources. So what does it take to do it right? And of those resources, what are we going to do with them? You can have all the resources, you can have the money, you can have the equipment, you can have the premises, you can have a bunch of people sitting around, you've got staff there, but what are you going to do? Which things do you have to be good at in order to deliver that value proposition? It's all hanging together. If you need to provide that value to those people on these kinds of relationship terms through these channels, What do you need to do? What are the important things that you need to do? There's a million things you need to do. And those of you who are in business, spend all your time as an entrepreneur doing all this busy work stuff that needs to be done. You have to pay the bills. Somebody's got to clean the glass on the storefront. All these things, but which are the essential, important things to delivering that value proposition? Which are the things you better be excellent at? So when we know what resources we need and what activities need to be done, now, and only now, we're in a position to figure out how are they going to get done? Who's going to take those resources and do those activities? Me? My partners? The staff? The volunteers? Somebody outside, some partner who's good at that? You start parceling these things out to the people who can do them excellently, and we're able to decide who do we need to partner with. This is a core activity, must be done excellently in order for us to deliver our value proposition, and we're good at this. Then we're going to do it. Here's another core activity, absolutely must be done excellently to deliver on our value proposition, and we're not very good at it, then let's partner with somebody who is. Because if that activity isn't done excellently, the business won't survive. We've already decided that's one of the things that must be there. To do the job right, you have to do this activity. We got the resources, but you have to do the thing. So somebody better do it, and somebody better do it excellently. So that's where we start deciding where the boundaries of our business are and who we partner with. That's where we start deciding why we want partners. For instance, one of the things that we need, one of the resources that we need is a certain amount of brand credibility, a certain amount of legitimacy. And we don't have that because we're a startup that nobody ever heard of. Then we're going to partner with somebody who's got a well-established name, and we know exactly what we're getting from them. We're borrowing their name, we're borrowing their credibility until we earn some of our own. And that's the deal. Now we have to think, well, okay, that puts them over in the... They need a value proposition. Why would they do that? So we start parceling where the things are getting done. Having done that, we now know what resources we need and what are the critically important activities that we have to perform and who's doing them. Now we know what it will cost to operate this business. So now we can figure out the costs. We know what it costs to get these kinds of resources. You want to get a big bag of money from an investor, you know what kind of return they're going to require. So you better figure into your business plans at some point, how are you going to pay them the returns that they want. You know you need these kinds of people. Well, what do people like that cost? And if you can't pay that up front, how are you going to figure out how to entice them to come on board? And we've got these partners. And the partners are going to do the thing that they're excellent at, but they're going to want to be paid for it. They're going to want to make a good margin on it because they deserve it. They're excellent at it. And we only want to partner with people who are excellent at things because these are the things that we decided have to be done excellently for us to succeed. So we can work out what the costs of the business are. So that's it. We walk through these 9 boxes in that order. Start with who are the customers? Who are all the customers, all the people who expect some kind of value from us? And then, what's the value proposition for each one of them? For each customer, what is it exactly that they want from us? And why is what we're proposing to give them better than what they already get? Every business already has competitors. If you think that you have no competitors, that's a game ender right there. You always have competitors. Whatever the thing the customers are living with, whatever pain they have that you're supposed to be solving for them, they're already dealing with it somehow. They may not like the way they deal with it. Maybe it doesn't work very well. Maybe it's very troublesome. Maybe it's very costly, but it is working somehow. So what is it that we do better? And how do we give them our wonderful solution? How do we get in their face and go, here, I have the solution to your pain? And what kind of relationship is that? So then what can we charge? Who's got money? Who will pay us for solving this problem? In a lot of our businesses, it will be that case of, we solve a problem for these people, but it's these people who pay us. That's okay. So long as somebody's paying us. And why are they paying us to solve their pain? Because they have a different pain. And in solving their pain, it solves theirs. We need to have all that straight. So we have revenues. Good. Now we've got money, we can spend it somewhere. What resources do we need and what activities do we need to perform in order to do it right, in order to do it in a way that will be sustainable, in a way that will have any impact in the market? And this is business. Good intentions don't count. Trying hard counts for nothing. You got to actually deliver. You have to deliver real value to those people, or they're not interested. So what things do we have to be good at? What resources do we need? Not what resources do we have. What do we need? Because we'll figure out where to get it. Put it this way. These are the resources that if you don't have them, don't bother. If you can't do it right, don't bother. Because you're going to waste 4 years of your life and all the money that you saved up. And maybe you won't get a second chance because you'll have burned your credibility. What are the things you must have and the things that you must do? And therefore the people you're going to need to partner with. And what will all of that cost? So we walk through that. And in practice, it's done just like that. Right? You take a standardized view of this, whoops, which is not that picture, but it's that picture. And you can download that, Google for business model template. But the easiest way, the way that I would do this, is get a whiteboard. Get a real whiteboard and go with a permanent marker and draw the black lines on it. And then go with either sticky notes or regular erasable whiteboard markers and start writing up what you think the answers are in each box. And that will be the first version of your business model canvas. The first of many. Because we're going to go out and find out whether any of this is true. That's the dynamic aspect. So there's our first static version. We sat down with the founding team and went through each box and asked those questions, and they're all, I think you saw, very simple questions. They're those sneaky questions that are very easy to ask, but very hard to answer. And doubly sneaky because they're very easy to fool yourself into thinking that you answered. Who are our customers? That's a real simple question. Who are they really? That's not so simple. So then you scratch your head and go, oh, I think we got these people. Oh, but there's these other people. Oh, wait a minute. Then somebody else chimes in and says, oh, no, that first group, they're not all the same. Because, you know, the left-handed people have different needs than the right-handed people. And so we'll have to treat them differently. We'll need a different value proposition. Or the left-handed people would never accept that channel. They want it delivered this way or something. Oh, good. We're getting a sophisticated answer now. We must be done. No, we're not. But it's very easy to fool yourself. When you sat around with your team and you spent a lot of time in a room with this up on the board and trying to put things there, you know, sticky notes up or trying, then you think you're done. Hey, we had a strategic retreat. I got my top management team together, the founders all got together, and we worked out our business model. You've just begun. That's only version 1. So the rest of the talk will be how do you get past that one? Because that's guaranteed, just like when you get to business plans later in the program. Is that still a few weeks away? When they get to business plans and you start forecasting financials, you go, oh, here's my pro forma financial statements. The only thing that we know for sure is that the business will never look like that. Right? It never works out.
Oh, yeah.
It's still a useful exercise. The hard thinking is worth doing, but what you produce is always useless. Same thing here. The hard thinking, the process of trying to answer those questions is a very valuable exercise for you and your team. But it's guaranteed that the business that you ultimately end up running will not look like version 1 of the canvas. So save version 1, come back to it a few years later, go, that's what we thought we were going to be doing? So, well then, what comes next? The canvas is just for brainstorming. It's just for you and your founding team to think about those questions and say, this is what we think they are. And sometimes you discover things right there because you'll discover that your assumptions of what goes into this box are very different than your partner's assumptions. But until you sat down and tried to write it in the box, you didn't discover that. But at the end of the day, these are just guesses. These are just hypotheses. And we need to now validate them. We need to find out, are they actually true or not? This is what we think, but that may not be what the market thinks. That's not what the world thinks. And the world doesn't care what we think. The world's going to be the way that it is. I mean, reality is reality, and you can't deny it. So we better go out and find out. And we better go out and find out before we launch this business, before we assemble these resources, and before we start burning money. Let's go make sure that this thing is right. So we move into a phase of trying to validate this by running experiments. It's a scientific process. We've got hypotheses. We think that these are the customers and they buy for these reasons and they value this. Let's go find out. So we're going to go out and conduct a bunch of experiments to try to find out what's going on and what the real business model is. So we want to learn from these experiments. We're going to conduct little mini experiments on each box to try and find out are our hypotheses correct. And when the world tells us something, ultimately the market will tell us everything that you need to know to be successful. The market will tell you if you've got the humility to listen to the answer, because it might not be what you're expecting. So we're going to go out and we're going to try to learn from this. So a few places we can go. First off, first bullet up there. There are some things that we can do just before we start. Something like by looking at good examples and bad examples. Who's tried to run a similar sort of business before, and what can we learn from those? We should inform ourselves with that. Most businesses, parts of it, major parts of it, have been done before. There isn't that much new under the sun. But you may need to look a little out of your normal field. That the business that you could learn from might be very different than your business, but in that one box of the canvas, they were the same. Well, let's go look at them then. And then after that, there's the things that we don't know. There isn't a good exemplar out there. There's nobody to copy from. So we're going to have to experiment a little bit more realistically. So I'll walk through how we do this experiment. Are we good so far? Am I going too fast, too slow? We're all right? Okay. So we'll look for the good examples. We'll look for who has tried something similar in that box of their business model and has been successful with it. And what can we learn from them? They had similar sorts of customers and segmented in the same way. What did they know about their customers that we could know about ours? They were serving the same people. Maybe they were trying to solve a different problem, but it was the same group. We could learn something from that. Or who's tried to provide a similar kind of value proposition? Or who's tried to earn their revenues in the same kinds of ways, same revenue streams? Who's done something similar that we can learn from? Steal it. Copy the good ideas. Similarly, and we don't do this nearly enough, we can do the same for all the people who failed. What is it that they tried? What didn't work? Let's not do that. I see a lot of entrepreneurs repeating the same old mistakes over and over because people won't look at past failures. People tried that before and it didn't work. Well, it'll work for me. Oh, why? What are you doing different? It'll work for me. Maybe you are doing something different. Are you doing the right, the thing that you're doing different, is it the thing that matters? How would you know unless you investigate? Why exactly that company failed? What part of that box of their model was the part that was fatally flawed? So those things is, go and do some investigating. Google's an amazing resource, all kinds of competitive intelligence, everything. There's been somebody who has done what you plan to put in that box before. There's been somebody who succeeded at that. Very different business, but in that box they were the same. And there's been somebody who's failed at it, and you need to learn those examples. And that's worth spending some time and putting some effort into, because this isn't costing you any money. When you try and launch a business for real, and if you didn't learn those lessons, the world will teach you. The world will teach you everything you need to know. And one of the things you needed to know was, don't do this. But now it's costing you money. So better to do it now. Think first. All right, so the good examples and the bad examples, we can copy them. We can learn from them. Oops, other way, there we go. And then there'll be the things that we're doing that we can't find prior examples for, that we're just assuming. We're taking that leap of faith. I don't know whether this will work. I couldn't find anybody who ever tried something quite like this. Most businesses have a significant innovation in them, and maybe you figured out some new way of putting things together that nobody's ever put those components together in that way and delivered that particular kind of value. Great. That'll be the thing that sets you apart in the market, if it works. And we don't know whether it will work or not. But at least we know that we don't know. And that's important. We know that we're blind about it, so we can say, let's go find out. Let's conduct some experiments to discover whether these assumptions are true or false. So we will do some testing of these hypotheses. In this part of my business model, this is what we think is going to happen, but we don't know whether it will work or not because we haven't been able to find anybody who's ever tried that before. So we're going to conduct experiments. We're going to bit by bit try this, test it, and see whether it works the way that we think. Now, if you want to conduct good experiments, you have to first ask very clear questions. Like, what do you mean that this is going to work? What does work mean? What would it take? And you have to collect good data. So that you can look at this data and say, what was the answer to our question? Is it yes or no? This works or it doesn't work? Where work has been clearly defined. If it works, it'll be, what's my example here? Average order size and average price. And if I don't get those numbers, then the answer is no. My assumption doesn't hold. I'd better change that part of my business model. And fortunately, maybe only ran for a few weeks in a limited market or something, and over there we look very foolish, but that's what test markets are for. So we conduct these experiments trying to answer very precise questions about the pieces of our business model canvas that we aren't copying from anybody, which are innovative. So we've got to go and get this data. And I find many entrepreneurs who are reluctant to do that because they're just in the thrill of operating the business and flying by the seat of their pants. And when you fly by, when you fly by the seat of your pants, there we go, you fly into the mountains. So you have to get the data. It doesn't have to be terribly sophisticated, but it's got to be basic kind of indicators that would tell you, is your assumption true or not? Like, wouldn't you want to know? Before you pour your life into this business, wouldn't you like to know that those core assumptions, those critical assumptions, are they true or not? If they're not true, better to know that now than after you've burned through, $500,000 and spent 2 years trying to get the thing off the ground, and then finally you figure out that the whole thing was based on a faulty assumption. So we try to find out, is it true or not? And how to do that? This is the lean launchpad buzzword, right? Get out of the building. You and your team at this point get far away from the whiteboard. Get out of the conference room and go outside, physically outside, and talk to people. You can't ever validate the assumptions by sitting around amongst yourself. There's no new data. There's no new knowledge. The only way you'll get any new wisdom coming into the conversation is by having new people to partake. So you've got to go out and talk to people. You got to get outside and find out what do they think about it. So which part of the business model canvas is it that we had this assumption in? We better go talk to people who know about that. We better get in their face and find out, hey, we're thinking about doing this. We were thinking about making something like this. Would you buy one? How much would you pay for it? Hey, we were thinking about partnering with a company like yours. Suppose we had a business that did this and the deal sort of looked like we'd get this and you'd get that. Would you be interested? Whatever the assumption is, whatever the clear question we're trying to answer is, that we go and find the right people to talk to about this. Ask them about it. Show them what we're thinking. Get their response. Get some other new insight outside of that echo chamber of our little conference room, which still has the business model canvas up on the wall. That's good. But we're about to start making changes to it. Because they will tell us stuff. They will tell us all kinds of things. And based on that, if we heard them, which is a hurdle in itself, because we're so passionate. We're headstrong entrepreneurs who are going to change the world. We're so passionate about what we're going to do that please don't confuse me with any new facts. But those facts are facts. They're there whether we listen to them or not. And if you don't listen to them, they're still going to come and kick you in the butt. They're going to come and kill the business. So we better listen. We have to listen to what these people are saying and be prepared for them to say things that are totally contrary. Not just a little bit different, but it might be completely 180 degrees different than the assumptions that are sitting up on our whiteboard. They will tell us these things, and then we can go back and make changes. And that ought to feel wonderful. We spent 2 days in this conference room writing stuff on the whiteboard and arguing about it and going through all kinds of conniptions to finally figuring out, no, it's not 2 customer groups, it's 3 customer groups, and these ones are going to pay us, but these ones aren't. And finally we got that done. Now we go inside the building and somebody tells us, it's not like that at all. And you have to have the detachment to say, wonderful. Thank God, I now know that. A lot of emotion, a lot of energy went into drawing this business model canvas here, and we're going to erase it now. Hallelujah. We are wiser than we were before. We aren't going to make that mistake. We were so sold on this. We all believed it. We were all in the conference room together, right? We all agreed after a long, hard day arguing about it. And we said, that's it. Let's bet the company on it. And now we know it's not true. So now we're going to go make changes. So we make these changes. Say, well, we'll erase that bit. Typically, we don't actually erase it. We put lines through it and then maybe change colored markers and say, here's our new version. Forget the black bit. Let's write in green. This is what we now think. So we get a revised version of the canvas. So that's what we do. We get out, taking our assumptions with us, one particular hypothesis that we're testing today or this week. We're going to go out and find out who do we need to talk to about that. What do we need to show them? What questions do we need to ask them so that we will find out whether that assumption is true or not? And then when we've heard them, we are going to gratefully take that new knowledge and change the canvas. And we haven't destroyed the company along the way because we haven't even launched yet. But we are that much wiser. They'll tell us all kinds of things. Like they'll tell us this. They'll tell us, we don't like what you're offering. We wouldn't be the slightest bit interested in it. But they would. There's this group you guys didn't even consider. But we're old timers in this industry. We totally know this industry. There are people who would like what you're proposing. Not us, we hate it. But they would like it. Go, I didn't even know they existed. Hello over there. We have a new customer group. Get up on the canvas and we strike out that first customer group and say they're never going to buy anything from us. They weren't ever going to anyway. We just thought they were. We were fools. But now we know they will. So we change it. Or they might tell us, what's the next? Whoops, one at a time here. There we go. Yeah, we like what you're talking about, and we do have problems that maybe you can help us with, but not those problems. You don't really understand what our life is like. You don't understand our challenges. You don't understand what we're trying to accomplish over here. Let us tell you about it. And if we humbly listen, they'll tell us. You have that problem? I had no idea that problem even existed. Thank you for telling me. And we run back and say, that's not our value proposition. We're not solving that problem. We're solving this problem. Wonderful. They might tell us, yeah, we like it. We like the value proposition. We have a problem, and that value proposition would solve it for us. But not for the reasons that you think. It's not because this thing clicks and makes slides go, but it gives me something to do with my hands when I'm standing in front of a crowd. I know I'm using really lame examples, I'm sorry. But the reason they like us will be different. So we've got the right people, and we got the right thing to offer them, and they're liking it, but not for why we thought. And that will show up on which activities are core. Yeah, we have to provide this to them, but it's not the buttons that are important. It's the size and the weight. Who knew? Well, now we know. Next one, they might tell us, they might use our stuff. They like it, they're using it, but they're using it for really weird things. Customers do that. And it turns out they don't use these things for clicking while they're giving, we thought professors will buy these things and they'll use them during lectures for clicking slides. And it turns out, yeah, professors do buy these things. And they use them as a status symbol with the other professors. My clicker is bigger than yours. Right? And they're buying them. And they're buying them because they're clickers. They're not like using them to hammer nails, although sometimes customers do things that weird. Like they'll use your product for a totally different purpose. Or the service that you're providing, they're gladly accepting it, but not for the thing that you think is valuable. So they'll tell us weird things like that. And they'll also tell us, this is the best one, they'll tell us, that, you provide that, I would pay for that. And you're going, I thought that was just cost of doing business. I was going to charge you for this. And they go, yeah, that's fine, I'd pay for that too, but oh my God, if you could do that, I'd pay for that also. There's money on the table that we didn't realize was there. That's the best one. because that's money that can fund other activities. So they'll tell us all kinds of things. The more that we go out to the people with a clear question in mind, and therefore ask them things, please tell me about this, please let me show you something, what's your comments, would you like it, what would you change, how would you use this, tell me about a day in your life, what is this pain like, how do you deal with it, all those kinds of research questions, and then listen to the answer and think, what does this answer change on my business model canvas? So we need to know, when we go out of the building, what is it that we're testing? Which box of the canvas are we in? What assumptions do we have in that box that need to be validated? Because if they're not validated and turn out to be false, we're dead. So what things are we going to do? Who do we need to test it with? That's the first question then. Okay, we're testing the revenue box, and we think we're going to charge a subscription. There's going to be a monthly subscription to our service. And we don't know whether anybody would pay for such a subscription. We'd like to test that assumption. Fine. Who do we need to ask? Who are the people? And again, I'm going to encourage us to take this stance. Not with what have we got and what's the best thing we can do with it, but what does it take to do it right, and somehow we'll get that. The same approach applies here. I want to know whether this assumption is true. Not who do I know who would have an opinion about it. Everybody has an opinion about everything. Who's the right person to ask? Whose opinion do I really care about? And how will I get to that person? She's the important person. She's the decision maker. She's got all the wisdom and knowledge about this. I want to know what you think. I don't care what 99 other people think. I want to know what you think. Because when you say this is good, it's good. So I want to get to her. So now, how badly do you want this business to succeed? I want to get to her. I'm not interested in talking to anybody else in the room. I want to talk to her. I'm going to find out how to get to her. Because her answer is the wise one that will cause me to write the right thing in my canvas. And when I get to the right person, what is it that I have to show her? Hey, I was thinking about making these clicker things. Do I need to show her one? Or is it enough just to tell her about it? I was thinking about making this thing you hold in your hand, you press the button and the slide changes. Is that enough? Do I need to show her a drawing of it? I could do a little computer mark, Google Sketch or something. It would look like this. Or do I need to give her one that, this doesn't actually work, right? I've been faking this whole thing. This is carved out of wood and I spray painted it black. Do I need to show her that? Here, you can feel it in your hand. Can't you imagine yourself using this? How real does the thing have to be? How little can you get away with? That's the attitude to have here. What's the minimum we can get away with in order to answer the questions? That's what this minimum viable proposition, that's the other lean launchpad buzzword. The value proposition, what's the minimum we can get away with to show somebody for them to be able to give us feedback on it? The minimum set of apparent features needed to test the current hypothesis. Does that make sense? And the two operational words in there. First one, it's the minimum set. Nothing more than what we needed just to test that hypothesis. So at different points in our canvas, when we're going around testing stuff, it might be very different. At one stage, it's enough for me to just say, hey, it's this thing that a professor would hold and click. But for another stage, maybe we do need a physical mock-up. What's the minimum set of apparent features? It just has to work enough to fool them into what would it be like to use the real one. So some of you, if you're starting up, it's going to be a piece of software. It would run on a PC and it would do these wonderful things for you, help you manage your agency and service delivery to your clients. Would you like to buy our software? You don't have to write any software. You just have to be able to give them a demo where the whole thing's been faked with a bunch of PowerPoint slides. Look, if I click on this button, it goes here. Well, if you click anywhere on PowerPoint, it goes to the next slide. They don't need to know that. There's a whole piles of demoware stuff for you to quickly mock up fake software. But it was enough for them to go, yeah, I could imagine using this, but I would like it to work this way, or there's features I would expect, or I want my logo on it. All that sort of standard marketing research bumps will come back. But it's the same thing for all of them. I'm using mostly the example of showing the product to the buying customer. But the same approach works for all of the customer groups and all of the value propositions. Supposing we did this for you. We're solving their problem, but you were paying us because we must be doing something for you. You don't want to see what we're doing to solve their problem. You want to see the thing, oh, what we'll give you is a monthly report. Here's a mock-up of what the report would look like. How would you like to get one of those every month? Is this featuring the information that you would need? What's the minimum set of apparent features we need in order to ask the right person and to get the insight necessary to make the change to the canvas? There we go. And so this idea of the minimum value proposition, the MVP, it changes over time. It depends which box we're looking at. It depends which people we're talking to, which question we're asking. That's the important thing. Everything else falls from that. This is the question. This is the assumption we're trying to test. Therefore, we're asking these people, and we're showing them this MVP. But later, when the question that we're testing is a different one, it'll be different people, and it'll be different MVP. Whatever's necessary to test that assumption. So now we can go out and conduct these experiments. And as we conduct these experiments, by getting a hold of people and giving them some minimum viable proposition and getting their feedback, and we will make changes. We will make changes to all kinds of things. And these are the 5 that I want to talk about just briefly. So we will learn things about where we can get revenues from. We already talked about an example like that. Like they'll say, oh, we will never pay for that. We expect that to come for free. But we would pay for this. Things, who will pay us? Maybe she won't pay us. The report's not valuable enough. She'd want the report, but she's not going to pay anything for that. But they can. We thought they weren't going to be able to pay for anything, but turns out they can. Or there's a third party who will pay to cover the whole thing. So we will learn things about the possible sources of revenue. We will learn things about the margins, right? About the costs. We know what the revenues are because we know the value and who's being provided to and who's able to pay for and willing to pay for what sorts of things on what sorts of terms. What can we do about the cost of production, about the cost of service delivery? So we can figure out where can we make better margins? Can we get better prices? Can we get lower costs? How can we improve the margin side of the business? Some experiments will tell us things about the fixed costs, the overall structure of the business. You know, there's my lavish office at the university there. That's a huge fixed cost. Costs like that, whether you get any revenues or not. Well, why in the world are you incurring that fixed cost? That's pushed your break-even out by miles. Oh, but sometimes there's a good answer to that. Sometimes that's a fixed cost that's necessary in order to earn the revenues. In my case, when people are coming to decide what university they want to attend, and they see the professors live in such lavish things, they go, oh, these guys must be really good professors. And we get their tuition money. Right? We wouldn't be able to earn the revenue if we didn't incur the fixed costs. All right, that's not bad, but we could probably do even better. Could we figure out some way to make that a variable cost by renting these? Oh, students are coming. We better bring in all this rental furniture and make the place look nice. And now it's all variable costs. A break even has suddenly come, 18 months earlier. That's good. Okay? So we learn things. What needs to be there and what doesn't need to be there about the cost structure. We learn things about working capital. How fast can we get customers to pay us? Who our customers are paying us, how fast can we get them to pay us? How long can we string out our suppliers to not have to pay them? All that kind of regular cash flow management stuff. And we'll learn what we can get away with and how we can reduce the working capital requirements of the business. And we will learn things about the investment side of it. Where are we getting that bag of money to start it from? From whom? There's all kinds of interesting financing sources besides banks and VCs. There's dozens of other obscure sources that you might not know about until you do that. Copy other people, their successes. Maybe their success was where they got their money from. Maybe their whole competitive advantage is around where they get their money from. The thing that they're selling or the service that they're providing is the same old junk that everybody else sells. But they're successful because they tapped into an unorthodox financing source. So we'll learn all kinds of things when we go out to ask people. So that's what this Lean Launchpad process is about. We've got this business model canvas, and we go out of the building and ask people, and we make changes to it. But it's a disciplined process. So this is what Ty is bringing here, is this program that was developed in Stanford for the high-tech industry, but it's been applied in a lot of different areas. It's a very disciplined process for thinking through, do I have a business model that works before I spend any money starting it up? We iterate back and forth between the canvas. Here's our current version. We're now up to version 5 on the canvas, and we've run out of marker colors. And now our assumptions are these, and we'll go talk to some other people, conduct some experiments, learn some stuff, and change it. And eventually we get to that day when there's nothing left to change. Everything that's up there is either been copied from somebody who's successful or has been tested by talking to the real people who know what they're talking about, and they've told us, yes, that's right. Now you're in a position to launch. You're in a position even just to go and raise your money. Oh, that's a business that's going to fly. That's going to be successful. That's the kind of business that talented people quit their job to come and join you. That's the kind of business that investors put their capital into. That's the kind of business that partners lend their names to, because all the parts of it work, and it's going to be successful. So we go through and we've got this iterated version of the business plan. Stack of evolving canvases, way better than a business plan, because all the parts in it have been tested in the real world. So you got to get outside. You got to go find people like her. Some people, when they started this, that's somebody who was trying to camp outside the CEO's office because that's who they needed to talk to. How badly do you want to succeed? And then come back and you say, this is how our canvas has changed. This is what we learned. We talked to 10 people and they told us this, and we're changing the canvas. So that's basically it. That's the process of using a canvas. I talked to you what the 9 boxes are, what they're about, and then this process of identifying very crisply what's the question, what's the hypothesis, what's the assumption that you've made there, and how to get out of the building and find out whether it's true or not. And then come back and change the canvas. And just keep doing that until the canvas stabilizes. Then you're in a position to launch a sustainable and successful business. That's it. Thank you, Lily.